It's a summer vibe over in Power Platform. And at the start of the year, we introduced vibe.powerapps.com. And nearly 6 months on, we want to see if they are living up to their potential. So, Charles, should we take a look at this today?
Yes, thank you, Josh. Yeah, so we were so excited, weren't we, at the beginning of 2026 when Code Apps was a thing and Vibe Apps was a thing, and we were talking about the potential of them. Code Apps has just gone storming through with amazing features and we're loving it. Before we jump into the actual vibe.powerapps.com experience, let's just talk very briefly about what's going on with it. So obviously, as we can see, that it is still in preview, right? So it's not something that you want to put into production, but is it a good system to use? Well, we know that it's good for demos and things like that. Can we actually use it now properly to get what we want from it? Let's firstly look at some details that we need to cover for if we're going to use Vibe Apps. So the first thing that's important is that in the prerequisites, you have to have Copilot in Power Apps turned on. If that's turned off, you just cannot use it. So that's the very first thing, and that's in your tenant settings. Another thing that's important is in environments, you find your environment, go to settings and then features, and make sure you turn on enable external models. What this will do is this will enable the anthropic models, so you're going to get given a stronger model to use. Because if this is not turned on, you're going to be using an older GPT model, I believe. It's not confirmed, but the quality is not going to be as good. The stronger model is turned on through this enable external models feature. And then the other part to it is that most people seem to think that Vibe Apps is just available in the US on US environments. That's not actually true. It's available in the US, Australia, Asia, and Indian regions. And also, very important to note, only in English. So when you're chatting with it, you have to use English at the moment. But it's not available, for example, for Europe. Anything else to add on that documentation front, Josh?
Yeah, I would like to point out as well that they're not available in the default environment. So you need to have an environment dedicated to this as well. So just a quick gotcha there as well to keep in mind.
That's a very good one I wasn't aware of. So thank you for that.
Okay, so we've gone over to the Vibe.Power Apps interface here. But Charles, what actually is a Vibe app in Power Platform, and why would we want to use one against some of the other options we've talked about on the channel?
All right, so I'm going to assume that people who are watching this know what a Canvas app is. A Vibe app, I would say, is kind of the replacement for a Canvas app. So it's where you are starting off with that blank canvas and you can build basically whatever you want as soon as they've put in all of the features. So it's something that's to be used by anyone, but of course that means that it's very good for business makers, for citizen developers. So you don't need to have any coding knowledge. You just chat to it in natural language and generate your app. And then any parts of your app that you're not happy with, you can iterate on them. However, it's not just like a Canvas app because it comes with a lot more than that. So yes, you can access all of the connectors that you can access with a Canvas app, but it also comes with the ability to generate Dataverse tables for you, to generate your data structure. So it's kind of got that feel of a model-driven app in that sense, I suppose. And it comes with a host of different agents that try and map everything out for you. So it tries to help you with your plan. It tries to figure out the best data structure for you, tries to figure out the best interface for you. So it's not like Canvas app land where you're thinking, well, how do I want this to look? Instead, you can just say to it, I want this. And if you don't give it all of the details, it's going to figure that out for you.
So it's a bit like an extension of the plan designer that we've had in perhaps for a little while now, but taking it to the next level and adding an app interface alongside some of those other bits in the planning stage, which is really nice, isn't it?
Yes, I just want to say something on the Plan Designer front, and that's that Plan Designer obviously suggests things like Power Automate flows, Copilot Studio agents, that kind of thing, whereas this doesn't. This is purely about, here's your plan for a code app, because essentially a Vibe app is a code app, but you don't have to do any of the coding. But yeah, it's just important to make that distinction. It's not going to go off and build Power Automate flows for you. It's not going to go off and build agents for you. It's purely going to build an app with the Dataverse tables behind it for you. So what we're going to do first is we're going to tell it what we want it to build. So I'm keeping it as simple as that because I want to show off another feature that comes with Vibe apps. This lovely pen with the sparkles, enhance prompt. If we click on this, what it's going to do is it's going to get AI to then enhance our prompt so that it's a better description for our app. So it says design an annual leave management app for employers, blah, blah, blah. Do we care? Not so much at the moment. But if you are building this for something where you do want it to be robust, of course, you do care about that. You'll probably iterate on it. So, Josh, we should probably mention this thing down here, this work IQ thing, right?
Yeah, we definitely should. And if you've not heard about what Work IQ is, it's this new Microsoft feature that's kind of working its way across the platform. And it's basically giving agents context about all of the Microsoft services that you use day to day so that agents can get enriched with that data. And that's a good way to explain it. It's grayed out for us because we don't have a Copilot license, sadly, so we can't demo this. But if you're getting requirements via email or Teams messages, you could use Work IQ and it's going to extract that out of there automatically rather than having to try and dig through them and store them somewhere else. So it's going to be really nice when we can demo that in the future.
Yeah, I believe it's emails, SharePoint, OneDrive, something along those lines. We've also got this add content here, which is where we can upload images. So this is actually allowed without needing that Copilot license, which could be really good for, let's say we have an interface and we know how we want it to look. We can upload the image of the interface and it will try to copy it as best it can. We also have this plan button. So whether we want to be in plan mode or not, of course, when you're starting off your app, you want to start off in plan mode. Planning's important. Plan, then build. As we always say with the code app side of things, we do have a dictation icon here. It's not going to work because my microphone is currently tied to the recording. If it wasn't, then I'd be demoing that. And then, of course, just submit it, which we're going to do. Now, time-wise, as far as the length of time it takes for it to build that initial app, it's really going to vary depending on what you're asking it to do. So if you're asking it for something that's very simple, there's a chance that you could get close to maybe 5 minutes, I think. But if you're asking it for something complex, then you're looking at 10 minutes, 15 minutes. Yeah, it depends. So while it's going through thinking and doing all of that stuff, should we just have a quick look at the limitations?
Yeah, let's do that.
Well, okay, Josh, is too quick for me. So what it's doing now is it's come back with a plan. So we'll look at the limitations a bit later. So it's essentially coming up with a plan for our app. It's telling us what the app is, the different users and access, core experience, pages and features. So it goes through a lot of detail. So we can accept this if we want to, which is what it's recommending, or we could keep editing. And if we decide we want to keep editing, then we have to submit that, and then we need to give it another message. And I'm going to tell it, can you reduce the scope and keep it simple? So that we can just reduce the scope and we'll get something built quicker, and then we can, of course, iterate on it later. But it is currently asking to do a lot.
It's worth pointing out this experience feels a bit more mature compared to the start of the year, but you're right, I think there needs to be a bit more verbosity, whatever the word would be, from the agent for this.
Yeah, so one of the things that when I'm working on software is I want it to avoid ambiguity. So like you can see there's this question and answer session that has started now, but why am I not getting that question and answer session before the plan? Why is it after the plan? To me, that doesn't really make sense. So what I would prefer is there to be an instruction about questioning on the plan first. And then when you get to this point, then yeah, why not have more questions if there are more things? So which reduced version should I implement first? So yeah, it heard my comment from before. I don't really care. We'll go for recommended. Approval workflow. Yeah, we'll keep it simple. Reporting. Let's say no reporting needed. Let's keep it extremely simple, and then submit our responses. And so while we've been chatting with this, you can see in the middle of the screen, it's giving us tips about different things, which is quite nice to have. So you can see that, as you say, Josh, it's becoming more of a mature experience. It's starting to feel more seamless and professional. So now it's just going to go off and start building things. So it's going to start writing the different files. It's been working on the CSS file for the styling. It's working on generating data models. So it's going to be calling different agents to do those different tasks. It's going to build out our data model, build the code, build the app, and then we'll have something to play with. So while that's happening, let's just have a quick look at the limitations. So you can't access or edit apps created in the new authoring experience outside of the new authoring experience. Probably not something for many people to worry about. Let's forget about the new authoring experience. So currently you can only have one app per plan. That is an important thing. It's not like Plan Designer where it can generate multiple apps. This is just one app that you're going to be creating. You can't open pre-existing plans in the new experience. Again, it's going back to that new experience. And it's talking about the fact that Canvas and model-driven apps aren't supported. I think that should be a given, and you probably don't want those to be part of it. Existing tables is an important one. That you can't, it's not going to automatically recommend existing tables. And you can't edit them via the chat. So you can use them. You can create your table, you can edit your table, but then you have to bring the table in manually. And you can actually look at the code, but you can't modify the code. And again, that's a really important thing to note, because you might want to tweak something because you know how to change the code. At the moment, sorry, but no cigar.
So it's a little bit hands tied behind the back still, isn't it, with this at the minute? Because maybe there's some edits we'd want to make in the code directly and can't do that just now.
So if I'm thinking about my approach to code apps and how that relates to Vibe apps, let's say that there's an error that occurs in our Vibe app and we want it to be fixed. Currently, we have to go into the chat and we have to talk to it and ask it to fix that error. Maybe ask it to provide us with some debugging information in the user interface to help with that process. But we can't fix it ourselves. Let's say that it fixes that problem, and then we ask it to create another feature, and that new feature introduces exactly the same problem that happened before. We have no way of stopping that from happening unless we specifically say in every new chat, when we're creating a new feature, don't forget that this went wrong last time and don't do it this time. If we're working on a code app, we have the ability to use agent instructions and skills and things like that. So we would have actually given it those instructions that we would have learned from. So in a code app, we'd be iterating and improving on our process. In Vibe apps at the moment, we don't have the capability to do that. So this is my call out to Microsoft, if you're watching, to please introduce something along those lines where it can learn, or we can provide it the information to learn, and then it won't make the same mistakes over and over.
This is key, isn't it? I think, from my point of view, the agent and AI experience that this is giving us is very lightweight. So I can't plug in MCP servers, for example, if I wanted to run some tests on this at the other end. Those things become quite important when you start getting a bit more mature with building apps with AI. And that's where code apps really starts to excel, because you're not held by these guardrails with an AI agent like you are with vibe.powerapps.com, sadly. So it'd be really good to see some of this stuff get injected into this at some point, being able to MCP servers, just a bit more of a in-app AI experience would be great. If I was able to add my MCP servers here, for example, that'd be brilliant. Then I could run my playwright tests for, accessibility and other bits and pieces. I think that'd be really good.
And for those people who don't know what MCP servers are, essentially it's like the agent's way of calling other connections outside of what we'd be running in our app. So for our agent to connect to something to then use it to aid with building the app. So I think what we'll do is we'll just fast forward until this is built.
So we are back after a good maybe 10 minutes or so, I'd say. It's generated our leave management application based off the plan that we produced. Do you want to walk through what it's actually generated for us?
Yeah, sure. So looks-wise, it looks okay. We didn't give it any guidance on that, so we can't complain too much. So yeah, it's a leave management app. It's telling us how many employees we've got, which I don't actually know if that's accurate. Are there 5 people in the system? We can scroll down and have a look. No, it's not. So these are not real people, or at least not people in our system. So it's not bringing through live data for that. Maybe we should ask it to do that. So we'll say to it, you need to get the employees from the Office 365 users connector. And we'll just see what it does, because of course, a lot of this is just about experimentation.
So if I want to add a connector, do I need to run that through the prompt as well, or can I add them manually?
Oh, well, that's a good point. So it's come back to say that this connector isn't available in the current environment yet. So what we can do is we can create that connection and then it will be available to this. But this does bring up an important point. So if I go up to publish here, you can see that the environment at the moment is draft. So it's just draft tables. It's not actually saved our Dataverse tables. And if I click on the arrow, you can see that it will then publish it in our Hue USA environment. This is where we are. So let's publish that. And then it does usually take a little while to do this. So what we've done there is we've published our Dataverse tables, as I just said, but we've also published the app. But what is the app? Is it going to say that there's a Vibe app? Well, kind of, but a Vibe app is just a code app behind the scenes. So the relevance to that point of it being a code app is when we're looking at this Office 365 users connection not being available yet. So it's not able to create that connection for us. However, there will be a way for it to do it in the future, because if we look at the documentation here for code apps, we've very, very recently been given the ability to create a connection from the CLI. And this is what that Vibe apps experience needs to be able to use in order to create a connection. So now that this is available, you can expect that to get hooked up in the Vibe experience. And then when we're creating our Vibe app in the future, it can generate that connection for us. Now, that is awesome. There are still some things to be aware of with this experience. Office 365 users, in my experience, works nicely in Vibe apps nowadays. However, trying to use things like Teams or Outlook hasn't worked for me in my experiments. So that's something that doesn't work, although it feels like it's kind of almost there. It puts it in the power config. Like the actual infrastructure seems to be there. It just cannot connect to it at the moment. So I really think that's imminent. And once that kind of situation is sorted, then it probably means that we can use just about any connector available.
Sounds really good, but I've noticed a big thing, and I think we need to call this out because I want to make some edits to this app, and it doesn't look great from my perspective. There's things that I'd want to change, but I really want to add an umbrella emoji next to the leave management heading. Can we do that somehow? Do I have to prompt and be really specific? There's an easier way to do that?
There is an easier way. So in the top bar up here, we've got some icons. One of them is toggle inline edits. But you know what? You can actually just hold down Alt on your keyboard and you get given it straight away. You don't even need to click on it. So if I hold it down, you can see that it's highlighting different parts of the screen. So you wanted it on leave management. I just click on that and then I can say whatever I want to change. Can you add an umbrella emoji to the end of this?
Yeah. To the end.
And I can put it as a question or I can just put it as a statement. So now that I've pressed enter, if I expand that chat again, you'll see that it sent it through to here. So again, a call for the Microsoft team. If I tell it to do that, it should expand the chat automatically because the user might be confused when they press enter and nothing's changing. But it's done it already and it's done exactly what we asked for. So that's a really nice feature.
Yeah, that's good. So we can toggle these inline edits and actually make our app really kind of pixel perfect, much like we've always tried to do with Canvas apps, but that feels a bit more easier to do, doesn't that? Which is nice.
Yeah, so there is something to be aware of with this. Like if we said that we wanted to change the color of the primary button, because that primary button is a component, if we ask it to change the color of it, it's going to change the color of the component. So anywhere that the component is used will be changed as well. So it's just something to bear in mind. And with that said, we can look at things like the code behind it. So we've got these different views. Code view, we've also got a split view where we can see the app and the code. So if you ever wanted to, if you're ever inclined to, you can actually go and look at the source code for it and you can understand what's going on. So like I said about components, in here you can see we've got things like a button component. So you can understand there that to build the interface, it's using components. And these are components just like you would use in a Canvas app, if that's what you're used to. But we also have things here like docs. So if I click on docs, then they still don't yet have a preview for the markdown here, unfortunately. So it's not the nicest display of it, but essentially it's a markdown file that explains some of the details around your plan.
Yeah, it would be nice to have the option to edit some of this, I think. Being able to edit, say, even this overview and preview it would be really nice. But we can only hope because that's going to bring the bridge between code apps and Vibe apps a bit more kind of closer to to parity, which would be really nice to see. So yeah, but it's also good that we can still see the code, and yeah, hopefully they'll make some progress here.
Yeah. And it's on the cards. So they know that people want this. You can see, you can get to the plan as well, by the way. But yeah, they know that people want to get to this. So the team are working on the ability to be able to move between the two experiences. So you might have someone who's a non-coder who creates the Vibe experience, and they get stuck on something, and then they ask a developer, hey, can you please just modify the code and sort out this thing for me because I'm not managing to do it myself with the chat. And then that will be possible. So that's going to be amazing.
Yeah, it will be. It'll be nice to see that. And we've obviously shown the app in the designer. We can obviously preview it. We've published the app though, but we haven't actually showed the app in, by playing it. Should we give that a go and see what happens, and see if it works?
Yeah, so you get this app URL, which you can copy. You can also just go to play here, and you also have a drop down where you can scan the QR code to play it on your mobile device. If the viewers are trying that, it's not going to work, by the way. It's an internal app. It's not for external users. So yeah, I can just click on play. It's going to open it up just like it would with a Canvas app. If there are any connections that it needs to create, it's going to come up with that prompt to say, do you allow those connections? And then here we are.
Now that's good. And I'd be really keen to see from a design perspective how far you can really push this. Just given that when we look at this in the Vibe.Power Apps designer, it always seems to generate very similar designs. And I'd love to see what it can and can't do from a design UI, UX perspective. So maybe that's a challenge we should tackle in the future.
Yeah, and I think on that note, it's important to bear in mind for this that you are within a limited experience. You don't have the same capabilities as you do in code apps. So in code apps, you could bring in an external package that can help you with, maybe you want to do some kind of 3D rendering or something like that for some reason. You could do that in a code app. In the Vibe apps experience, you're not allowed to bring in external packages, at least not at the moment. It's a very locked down experience, but the hope is that this will very soon be something that can be really useful for these kinds of scenarios. One prompt and you get your annual leave management app. You hook it up to Power Automate or to the Teams connector, and then off you go, you're sorted. So another thing that we should point out is just really with this interface. So we showed toggle inline edits. There's also a refresh preview button. Sometimes if you make an update, it might not come through properly and you want to refresh it. There's your option. You can view it in different screen sizes. So it's supposed to be responsive by default. It won't always do that properly. As you can see here, we do have a slight issue, but you can just prompt it to fix that. That's not a big deal. Same thing with accessibility issues. So if you notice that maybe you're not happy with the color contrast somewhere, like maybe with the save entitlement, you can just prompt it to fix that kind of problem. We know about the plan because that's the plan we created before, but we also have this data tab. And this data tab looks really familiar to that data experience that we get with Plan Designer, because I believe it's basically the same technology. So yeah, you can move around, you can move your tables around, you can create new relationships from the top here. You can play with these as well to then view the relationship options and change things where you're allowed to change them. There's a lot to this. You can also prompt it to give you additional sample data if you want that. Yeah, like I say, there's so much you can do here. And adding a table, of course. So you can draft a table, you can add an existing Dataverse table, which is what we were talking about with the limitations. But you can also add an existing SharePoint list. So that's where it gets very interesting with that conversation about, I have a Canvas app that's linked to a SharePoint list. I want to upgrade it. This is going to be that path. Change it to a Vibe apps, create a Vibe app from scratch, which is a code app essentially, and then bring through your existing SharePoint list. And there you go. You have an app that is way more performant and way better so quickly and so easily.
Even if I don't have a license?
No, unfortunately not. So yeah, this entire experience, like you can probably tell from the fact that we're talking about Dataverse, this entire experience needs a premium Power Apps license of some sort.
Yeah, good to know. Good to call out.
So right, before we leave you, I just want to call out a couple more things. So in the top right-hand corner here, I didn't mention the fact that we've got connections here. So when you click on connections, if you have a connection, then it will show up in here, and it will show up with green if it's connected and red if it's not. So that's where you can check your connections. But as I said, some connections will work, some won't. Very soon, I believe they will all be working nicely. So I'm looking forward to that. We've got the ability to share the app here, so you can copy it. And it says only people added here can access the app. You add the people here. Because we're in a developer environment, we can't share it with groups, but you can share it with groups when you're outside of a developer environment. So that's an important caveat there. And then in the top right-hand corner, we've got more options. And then here we've got settings. So we can change the entire Vibe experience into dark mode, which is my preferred one, to be honest. We can get to our session details, which can be really important for if we're needing to debug something. And then also we can give feedback. Now, this is something that I think is really, really important in these early stages with Vibe apps. If there's something good or bad, you can give your feedback to Microsoft in there and they will actually read it. They'll know about it. It's not something that gets hidden. So that's a great place to go if you want to give feedback. As you can probably see, the experience has come along, but we're not yet at the point where we really want to start using it in anger. Although you can see that it's not actually far for it to cross that boundary. And what we know at this stage as well is that as things get unlocked in code apps, they then eventually get unlocked in Vibe apps as well. So for you as a user, as a viewer, it's a good idea to keep abreast with what's happening with code apps, even if Vibe apps is what you're ultimately wanting to use. And in order to keep abreast of all of the changes in code apps, there must be a YouTube channel you can watch, right? Somewhere. So feel free to subscribe.